Hello and welcome, Exiles, to what I'm calling my Universal Spellblade build. This character specifically is using the new support Spellblade, which gives 140% of the base damage of your weapon to all your spells or whatever spell you're using. We are stacking a lot of ES and we're using Energy Blade for a massive one-hand weapon. You'll see this is 200 to 4,000. That's an average of about 2,100 damage. It is adding to my spell. Most skills, that's the equivalent of turning a level 20 skill into a level 40 skill. It is that much base damage, and I intend to take this higher. This is advancing basically the formula I tried out and made last league with gigaRF, where we stack strength and int and life, and we use ivory tower, and we get a massive ES pool. But the thing is, this character gets the damage actually quite a bit easier than gigaRF did. gigaRF was dependent on basically Dune Quabre for the damage per strength. It was dependent on the synth mod for damage per strength, the boot mod damage per strength. It was really dependent on these small percent damage scalers. And then on top of that, it was a fire dot. Fire dots have very few scaling metrics. You basically have to scale a couple of curses. You have to scale fire dot multi, percent damage, and that's about it. You don't get a lot of ways to scale the damage. Whereas a hit-based character, we can scale speed, we can scale pen, we can scale crit, we can scale percent damage, we can scale the flat damage. We get basically more levers to pull that scale our damage than gigaRF did, and we get them easier. In this character, we get Wrathpith, which is a big percent damage scaler, and on top of Wrathpith, we also get Iron Will, which is also a big percent damage multiplier. It's, for example, the Dune, the weapon I was wearing, gave me 1% damage per 8 strength. This gives 1% damage per 5 strength, which is almost as much as Dune plus the synth amulet plus the synth boots. And then on top of that, we have percent damage from Wrathpith, not to mention we're going to be getting crit chance from Wrathpith as well. So it's basically building upon my previous formula in the new league. Now, last league we had Crucible, which was a lot of basically attribute scaling. You could get a massive amount of percent strength and percent int. We are obviously losing that scaling, but that being said, even though I don't plan to get this character to 60, 70,000 ES like I did gigaRF, I think I can get this to a competitive probably 30 to 40, maybe even 50k. But I think if I want to go to 50k, I probably have to drop the Mage Blood and change into a Stygian Vise, which I plan on actually making a version for. Because I know there's going to be people that want to play this build where Mage Blood's just way too out of their price range. And I think it would be cool to set up a version without it. I originally planned this build around the idea of using Original Sin and Mage Blood, and I was going to be doing Spark, and I realized I was just half-assing the strength stacking and the life scaling, and I was bricking my whole build to force in things when I could just have a character that can pretty much put any skill at once in and just have a build that functions. Right now, our scaling is so generic. It's just so much base lightning and so much percent damage and crit chance. I can put in pretty much whatever skill I want and I'll do damage. I'm going to showcase this because I have 3 maps here and I have 3 skill setups. The first one I'm going to showcase is just Impending Doom, just because Impending Doom is a hilariously chill playstyle. I've never played it myself. I haven't optimized this for Impending Doom. I haven't gone and gotten any CDR. There is probably a vision in my head for what I could do to optimize this for Impending Doom if I want. But I'm just going to showcase it to you real quick, what it looks like in a map to give you an idea. Oh, I have Impending Doom, it works. And then I'm going to showcase Firestorm, and I'll showcase a Solren, just showcase Solren, one of the worst hit-based skills you could probably use, and show that it could still do damage regardless. Okay, enough of that. Let's get into just showcasing what this looks like in a map. We just have a bunch of base lightning. If you were going to look at my skill, for example, I was going to show you Impending Doom. If I were to look at it real quick here, Impending Doom, it says we have, look at the difference in damage here, 50 to 70,000 chaos damage, and it says 350 to 700,000 lightning. That just is supposed to give you some context for how it turns any skill into a lightning skill. This might be a base chaos skill. Impending Doom is a skill that actually hits pretty hard in chaos, but we're really dealing quite a large amount of what's the word? Where's the last guy at? Okay, he's over here. We're dealing quite a large amount of lightning damage, and actually the 90% of our damage ends up being lightning, and it's going to become more and more so that way as I re-optimize the build. I'm not really happy with my current tree setup on this character because it's kind of just, it's half into one camp, half into another. Right now, I'm not reserving 1,000 life, which is costing me about 300 flat ES, which would be more ES scaling. specifically to do Righteous Fire, which sometimes if I press enough skills at the same time, Wrath Pith will still deactivate. So it's a little bit awkward. I'm forcing in a bunch of max res. I'm doing all these things just to force in Righteous Fire, which is costing me more damage than I would actually have if I just leaned more into the strength ES scaling that this character has. It is just so I guess efficient would maybe be the right word, and that's what it looks like doing a boss in just an impending doom. And now we'll give you a showcase of what it looks like to do we'll do a Phoenix with Firestorm real quick here. We'll swap this in and then give you an idea of what it looks like if we were to do something like Phoenix. And then we will do a Soul Rend showcase just to showcase a skill that normally doesn't really have hit-based damage, but it can still do damage just because the scaling efficiency in this character. All right, we'll go ahead and do a Maven, which I guess I already have Witness, so we'll just do this as Eater real quick. I didn't realize that Witness, so kind of probably should have picked a different map, but it's fine. The point I'm trying to make about this character is just to showcase that it doesn't really matter whatever skill you want. Pretty much if it's a hit-based skill, you can put it into this build and it will be viable. The last time I had a character that could do this and could do this well, where it could basically take whatever skill and it could make a good build out of it, it was I believe the Delirium Herald Stacker. That character was so efficient with its scaling that it could take whatever skill it was, pump it in, and it would be like almost essentially the best version of that skill. That build, granted, Purposeful Harbinger was completely broken, and there were some other like very questionable things in terms of the what's the word? So many things were counted as auras back then. Like Tailwind, for example, was an aura, and you could get you could essentially have what's the word? Like 50, 60, 70% action speed depending on how much aura effect you had just from Tailwind. It was like some crazy stuff like that where you could scale it up. But outside of that, this build, hopefully when I'm done with it, this is going to be a long-term project for me of basically upgrading and fine-tuning and trying out different versions. But the goal for this version, or the goal for this build, would be essentially to have a build where it can do any skill and it can do it better than most builds that are specifically trying to optimize for that skill is the plan, or that's the goal at least, I should say. So this is what it looks like if I was to do a Phoenix right here. Now this has a bit of a delay of like those things hitting him because he was like moving and whatnot, but the single target obviously still pretty good. I think we can get it quite a bit better than this, but we will see. Now let's give a little showcase of what it looks like if I were to just hop in a Soul Rend here. So we have Soul Rend, Crit Strikes, Pinpoint, whatever. This should be fine for this. Pinpoint, Soul Rend, yeah, that should be okay. Let's give this showcase on a Dunes map. And then I'll talk a bit about the character and what I plan to do with it going forward. And I'm going to be continuing making upgrading changes and whatnot. And I'm going to be doing that on stream for those curious about it. But now this is, to be truthful, this is not very much killing anything with the dot damage. We don't have very good dot damage on this skill. This is very much, the DPS is pretty much only the hits that's killing things, which Soul Rend is a 170% effectiveness skill. It's not a very high hit-based damage skill, but regardless, it still could do damage. Just like you can click pretty much any hit-based skill and whatever animation you prefer to see, it's turning that skill into a massive lightning damage skill, and it will still have perfectly viable damage, so to speak. So we go over here, put an Assassin's Mark on him, and he does his little pull his sword out thing, pauses the damage he takes, and then he dies, right? So that's just showcasing what this does in terms of taking whatever skill you're playing and it will do damage. Even a skill like Soul Rend, where it's only 170% damage effectiveness, it's a 0.8 cast time, so it's a pretty slow cast time at that, and it's 5 base crit. This is the skill that by no means should be doing good hit damage, and here we are killing a T16 boss with relative ease. That's just to showcase just the power of such a large amount of flat damage we're getting from our weapon here, on top of combining it with a lot of strength scaling and a lot of life scaling for Wrath Pith. Right now we have about 10k life. In my gigaRF character, I ended up getting all the way up to about 19,000 life, 69,000 ES, something like that, and that was obviously before the transfer to Standard. Standard took that character to 100,000 ES plus because Legacy, Shaper's Touch are insane, but regardless, hopefully it gives you a little idea of what this character can do. Right now, the current inefficiencies with this build are I'm going into a bunch of max fire res like this, and I'm spending a bunch of extra passives. This isn't really an ideal pathing I have right now. And on top of that, I'm also grabbing this cluster. I have a bunch of basically inefficient points where it's not really appropriately set up for the strength ES stacking, along with there are quite a few gear upgrades I need to make where, like for example, this ring. I don't need the lightning res. I don't need the cold and chaos res. This is a 53 life, 67 strength ring with just percent strength. I want to farm the currency to re-roll this to have percent strength and other usable attributes on it. But right now it was basically just I bought the base and I couldn't really afford to craft it, so I just chucked a couple essences at it and I was like, yeah, that's gonna stay like that for now. I'll fix it later. So for example, that's there. This is a placeholder ring until I can manage to craft this into a good version and then try to Calandra it over for the duplicate value. But the point is, there's a lot of inefficiencies with this build. I know I have a Mage Blood on. I actually want to showcase a non-Mage Blood version for those curious to try to put the build together without the level of investment of Mage Blood is like a massive cost. I grinded multiple days in Sanctum to get the currency for this, and I think the build could actually do pretty well even regardless without it, because quite frankly, I have to invest into Pathfinder anyways to get Coruscant Elixir up, and so you could very easily drop Rakiatas right here, drop this Tempered by War, and our flasks we're well over cap. We don't need the extra effect for capping res on either of these flasks. I very easily could grab Onslaught on hit here, drop the Silver Flask for maybe something that has higher uptime, like a Diamond Flask, and, you know, obviously, it's not going to be as fast. Mage Blood has a bunch of extra speed built in, it has a bunch of extra res built in, so it makes everything a little bit easier, but it's not like it's undoable for this character. Like, the fact we're already investing into Scion Pathfinder anyways, just to get the Coruscant Elixir means it's not that big of a crossover, and we'd get a bunch of ES scaling from it. And ES Stygian Vise with basically percent attributes in strength, life percent, flat life. A Stygian Vise like that is a massive scaler for a build like this, and Mage Blood, although it is great, does not scale the ES quite like that. So anyways, I just wanted to showcase this build I'm working on. It's going to be a long-term project where I'm going to do multiple update videos to it, similar to my gigaRF from last league. Hopefully you guys enjoy the concept behind this character, and until next time, take care, Exiles, and peace out.